Everybody knows the feeling January brings, that melancholy feeling of sadness when festive times have already departed, leaving nothing but freezing weather and sadness. Everyone in my class sure felt it, except for one of my classmates, Holly. She never let the Christmas spirit in her die, and it stayed in her well into June most years. After a while, someone eventually gave her the nickname Jolly Holly, and she wore that nickname with pride. The whole class dreaded her walking in after Christmas break. Seeing her bright smile, still dressed in her ugly sweatshirt with pearly knitted reindeer on it, not to mention the candy cane hair clip and her dirty blonde hair keeping her ponytail up. "Hello, everyone," she said with a bright smile, walking to her desk and humming Christmas carols. We all let out a collective sigh. Holly, Sadie, the girl sitting in front of her, started, "Why are you still so cheerful? The holidays are over, and they won't be around till the end of the year," she stated in a patronizing tone. At that moment, I could have sworn I saw Holly twitch a little, but her smile never wavered. "The Christmas spirit is never gone," she said in an upbeat voice. "The happiness of the holiday times is an amazing feeling, and I, for one, embrace it," she finished, leaving nothing but a wide grin on her face. Our classmates scoffed, threw her hands up in the air, and gave a whatever before turning back around and getting ready for the teacher to arrive. I couldn't blame Holly for enjoying Christmas. The happiness you feel around that time is something that fills me with joy. And seeing how I just turned 18, I made sure to enjoy what would have been my last holiday week off. But to Holly, it was an addiction. The amount of time you'd hear her go on about it made everyone she brought it up to groan. After school had ended, I began to pack up and started to walk home. That is until I stopped in the hallway to see Holly and Sadie arguing. Only this time she was furious. I wanted to ignore it, but a crowd had blocked the way. Holly was trying to pick up her binders off the ground, still smiling, but her running eyeliner gave away a different emotion. Sadie loomed over her, giving Holly a menacing leer. "Seriously," she yelled, "why won't you give this festive crap a break? Do you know how annoying it is to hear 'O come, all ye faithful' for the gazillionth time?" Her face was starting to become red, and as the crowd's volume died down from Sadie's yelling, I could hear Holly humming that exact song as more tears fell from her face. Holly didn't say a word to Sadie. She just kept humming, sounding more frantic as it went on, almost as if she was trying to stop herself from hyperventilating. I couldn't take it anymore. Sure, it was annoying, but she wasn't hurting anybody. I decided then and there that enough was enough. "Hey!" I yelled, a bit too loud, if I'm being honest. The crowd froze at that moment and turned to look at me. Anxiety filled my mind then, my face beginning to flush. She, she's not hurting anyone. What's with the hostility?" Sadie stared at me then, puzzled by my outburst. She looked back down at Sadie, now giving her a smug expression. "What?" she said. "Gonna let your boyfriend stick up for ya?" God, if my face wasn't that red before, I must have looked like a tomato right now. "She's not my girlfriend," I blurted out. "I just don't understand why you have to ruin her fun if she's not doing anything wrong." Sadie shot at me a dirty look then and scoffed. "Not doing anything wrong," she replied, annoyed. "You don't sit right next to her in almost every classes. Do you know how annoying it is to hear nonstop Christmas carols for half of the year?" The anger on her face became more permanent. The more she went on, Still, I continue softly, even if that's the case, why don't you talk to teachers about it? I ask, knowing fully well the teachers wouldn't do anything. If they were responsible teachers, this fight would have been over by now. Right, a lot of good they'll do, she said, hearing the sarcasm in her voice. She looked back down at Holly and gave her a menacing grin. I think it's time we put an end to her holiday cheer for the year. Before Holly had a moment to look up from her binders, Sadie gripped her by the ponytail, yanking her up from off the ground. The shock of what she was doing made me gain composure. Hey, I shouted. What are you doing? But before I had a chance to ask, Sadie took Holly's candy cane hair clip with her free hand, dropped it, and smashed it with her foot. Her jean lifting up for a second to reveal her heart tattoo she loved to flaunt. The world froze in that moment as Holly screeched and Sadie let go of her, walking off towards the front of the school to leave. And the crowd dispersed, sensing that it was the end of it. Picking up the pieces of her hair clip, Holly's tears began to stain the floor of the hallway as she began humming Frosty the Snowman through hiccups. Feeling bad, I picked up the rest of her stuff and helped her up. Sorry about that, I said softly. Guess they aren't ones for the holidays. She wiped some of her tears off her eyes. I know we don't talk to each other, but I'm sure you remember my name, right? It's Jonathan from homeroom. She just stared back at me, her face beginning to blush. I'd be lying if I said I didn't as well. Not like she could tell, though. My face was still flushed from pushing my anxiety past its limits. She didn't say anything as she turned around in an instant and ran off. A few days passed since then, and Holly and I began talking more. She was actually really nice, and it wasn't like she sang all the time, just a lot more than a normal person would. Something about her seemed off though since that day. She was quieter, leaving Sadie grinning to herself. At the end of the day, Sadie got up and stared down at Holly, giving a slight chuckle. What's the matter? She started. No more holiday spirit left in you, Jolly Holly? She began to laugh. Maybe now you'll finally quit that nonsense. I got up and stood right next to Holly's desk, eyeing Sadie, and gave her a look that told her to leave. She took the hint, smirked, and turned on her heels and walked out of the classroom with confidence. You okay? I asked Holly. She just nodded and smiled. I smiled back. You know, I said, I could walk you home if you'd like. I said, my face starting to blush. She blushed back. I like that, she said softly, and we left the school and headed home. As we were walking home, Holly seemed more lost in thoughts, only giving me slight smiles and nods. We eventually made it to her house and we said our goodbyes. Snow had begun to fall, which gave me a good indicator to make it home, which thankfully was only a block away. I texted Holly that night to see if she was still doing okay, but I hadn't received a reply for a few hours. That was until right before I drifted off to sleep. I received a text message from Holly that just read, I'm just jolly. Relieved, I texted her back saying goodnight, then headed to bed. The next day, Sadie had failed to show up to school. Apparently, she had gone missing last night, leaving her parents worried sick. The whole day there were whispers of what could have happened to her. During the end of school, I grabbed some stuff from my locker. I walked to ask Holly if she wanted to walk home again to keep her safe, but some classmate in the hallway told me that they saw her already leaving the school. Sulking, I began to walk home alone. While walking home, I tried texting Holly, but again, no response. Growing worried, I was about to call her until I started to hear it. Humming. The sound was faint, but I swore it was humming I heard. Looking over, I could hear it within the woods I was walking by. I grew terrified, feeling fear well up within me until I recognized it. Frosty the Snowman. Knowing only one person who still sang that in January, I began running into the woods. I started calling for Holly, but I got no reply back. After a while of calling her out, the humming had stopped. I stopped to catch my breath, and after a moment, I was startled by Holly. Jesus! I screamed. Don't sneak up on me like that. She smiled at me. I stared at her for a second, collecting myself. You had me worried. Why didn't you text or call? Holly stood there for a bit, her eyes never drifting away or her smile wavering. I'm sorry, she said deep down. I was busy making you something. What could she have made me? I wondered. But before I thought any more about it, she grabbed me by the hand and began walking further into the forest. Her hands were wet and as cold as ice, leaving me more worried than I was before. Holly, I began, we gotta get out of here. What if there's someone out here watching us? What if they get us, like Sadie? I stammered. Holly said nothing and continued to drag me more into the woods. We eventually made it where she was taking us after what felt like a half an hour, when she stopped and pointed over something. I couldn't make it out at first until I got closer and noticed what it was. A snowman. Gee, Holly, I said off guard. It's lovely, but why did you make it all the way out here instead of one on your lawn? I looked at her and she was staring off into the sky. I really love the peace and quiet here, she said nonchalantly, as she began humming Silent Night. Confused and not knowing what else to do at that moment, I just inspected the snowman more, and I had to give it to her. She didn't know how to make a great snowman. Top hat, cold button, the scarf, and the branch? Inspected closer, my face began to turn pale from what I was seeing. The black appendage weren't sticks, they were arms. Arms that had succumbed to frostbite to severe length becoming black due to the freezing temperatures. You know a great thing about Christmas? I heard from behind me. Slowly turning around, my breathing became faster being shown through the mist I was making. I stared back at Holly staring back at me, those bright blue eyes staring daggers into me as she pointed up. Mistletoe. Too scared to move, I slowly looked up, and just a few feet dangling off the tree branch was a foot with an all too familiar heart tattoo. Snow fell in heavy silence as 15-year-old Claire explored her family's new home. The Victorian home was cold and creaky, its frost-covered windows dulling the light. Upstairs, in her small bedroom, she noticed a hatch in the ceiling, an attic door slightly ajar. Curiosity pulled her up. Inside the dusty attic, she found an old leather-bound diary. December 12, 1902. Il est venu hier soir. J'ai entendu les cloches d'abord faibles, mais de plus en plus fortes. La neige était rouge. The hairs on Claire's neck stood as she deciphered the words. He came last night. I heard the bells first. The snow was red. That night, she couldn't shake the diary's words, but as she lay in bed, a faint jiggling sound crept through the air. Claire froze. She peeked out the window and saw hoof prints in the snow leading into the woods. The next night, the bells returned, louder, closer. Her breath hitched as she heard heavy footsteps on the stairs, then the creak of her bedroom door opening. She dove under the bed, clutching the diary as frost spread across the floor. From the shadows, she saw clawed hooves stepping into the room, trailing snow. The bells jiggle again, sharper this time. A guttural voice growled from above.
As-tu été sage, petite fille?
Claire's head pounded.
Have you been good, little girl?
When she dared to look, glowing red eyes stared back at her. A long, clawed hand reached under the bed, and the bells grew deafening. She woke screaming, drenched in sweat. The diary sat untouched on her nightstand, but frost coated the window, spelling a single word. À bientôt. It had been 1 year since I lost Rebecca. She was the love of my life. Rebecca was the kind of girl to bring joy to an entire room. Her favorite holiday was Christmas, and we would go all out every year together. Rebecca had stage 4 breast cancer, and the doctor said flat out that there was nothing to do but to cherish the time we had left together. It was around the same time I threw away my 1 year AA chip into the garbage. I said to myself, I got clean for her and now I'm going to lose her. So what's the point? The next couple of months after she died, I spent most of my time at the dive bar, which led to 2 of my drinking while intoxicated. Shot after shot, the hatch to forget about everything. It was December 24th, 9 p.m., Christmas Eve. I had to give up the home that Rebecca and I had to live in for so many years because the memories were too painful. After my third DWI, the judge ordered me to put a breathalyzer in my car, so I decided to start walking everywhere I went. I left the bar and walked home to my apartment. I was holding back tears looking at all the Christmas ornaments set up. I was thinking in my head, why did it have to be her? Why not me? I was the fuck up. I got to my apartment and walked up to the 3rd floor where my place was. I opened the door, put my jacket on the hanger, and grabbed a beer from the fridge. I dozed off watching TV when suddenly I heard a knock at the door. I walked over to the door asking myself who would it be at the door at this hour of the night? Since my door didn't have a peephole, I had to open it to see who it was. As I opened the door, I saw 3 men and 3 women wearing Christmas attire. They started singing Christmas songs, and I realized they were Christmas carolers. It wasn't even 5 seconds into the first song when I slammed the door. I remembered how much Rebecca loved Christmas carolers, and I wasn't ready for that. Although I slammed the door in their face, I heard their voices singing through the walls. At this point, I decided to go and grab something a little stronger. I pulled out a bottle of vodka from the liquor cabinet and made myself a drink. A couple of drinks later, I passed out from the intense amount of alcohol I had consumed. I woke up to a loud banging sound coming from my door. I was still a bit drunk and feeling groggy from the liquor nap. Forgetting about the carolers from earlier, I walked over to the door, opening it to see nothing. I said to myself, fucking kids. I closed the door and turned around to see a shadow in the darkness of my apartment. I stood in shock. My fight or flight kicked in and I was in complete flight. The shadow of the person then fled into the bedroom. I grabbed my phone and ran into the closet to hide. I dialed 911 to inform them of an intruder. What I heard on the other end of the phone chilled me to the bone. It was Christmas carols. the same one that the carolers were singing from the hallway of my apartment. I started sobbing to myself, thinking about the choices I'd make following Rebecca's death. I don't know how long it was till I decided to exit the closet, but when I did, I booked it to the door and the apartment hallway. I ran to the stairways at the end of the hallway to find that it was locked from the other side. I turned round to see five of the carolers from before standing at the other end of the hallway. I looked closer at them and noticed that they had unnaturally large smiles from ear to ear, and their eyes, oh God, their eyes. It was as if they were looking into my soul. The five carolers started moving towards me, and they weren't walking. It was as if they were levitating towards me. I started banging on the locked door to the staircase. I used all my body strength to break the door open, and I don't know if it was just the adrenaline rush or me being pissed drunk, but instead of using the stairs like a normal person, I jumped out the window from the third floor. I woke up Christmas morning in the hospital in the ICU. I was covered in bandage and my leg was in a cast. A nurse walked into the room to check up on me. I asked the nurse what happened. The nurse looked at me with a stern look and told me that I had jumped through a third-story window onto the concrete. She informed me that I had received multiple severe cuts from the glass window and I had a broken leg from the fall. She also told me that when I arrived, I was hyperventilating and screaming about some evil Christmas carolers. That's when everything from the night before came back to me. The nurses handed me a remote to the TV in my room and told me that the doctor would come and see me in a bit. After she left, I decided to watch some TV, thinking maybe movie Elf was on. Although Rebecca's passing destroyed my view of Christmas, I still enjoy watching Will Ferrell in that hilarious costume. I turned the TV on to see the local news to a breaking news story. The reporter claimed that three murders had taken place last night in my area. All the victims were and lived alone. Neighbors were questioned by the news team, asking if they had heard anything strange last night, to which responded, "Yeah, I heard a faint sound of what sounded like a Christmas carol at like 2 or 3 a.m. I don't know if it's relevant, but it was weird. My jaw was wide open. I was thinking that what happened last night was a very vivid nightmare, and I had a panic attack because of it, causing me to jump out of a window. A day later, my parents picked me up from the hospital and brought me back to their house to take care of me while I recovered from my injuries. I think I'm going to stay with them much longer than that, and I'm thinking about reconnecting with my sponsor and AA. I just don't feel all that safe alone anymore. Update. It's been 4 or 5 months since the incident, and I made a full recovery from my injuries. I started to go back to the meetings, and I had a month clean to the booze. I've also started to overcome the pain from Rebecca's passing, and I'm moving on with my life. I miss her, but she's not here anymore, and I am. I started going out with a new woman named Maria. She's not at all enthusiastic about Christmas, which may be a good thing. If I've learned anything from this experience, is that things can go bad in life, but it can always be worse. I'm just hoping next Halloween goes smoothly.